The cries from room 307 were less a sound and more a tearing of the soul. 10-year-old Mateo Flores was a small, contorted silhouette against the hospital sheets, his body locked in an agonizing spasm of dystonia. Every muscle screamed, twisting him into an unnatural, terrifying knot. His mother, a ghost of a woman, wept silently by his bedside. Professor Aris Papakostas, head of neurology, surveyed the scene with a practiced, weary gaze. His voice, usually resonant, was flat. "There are no more options," he declared, the words hanging heavy in the sterile air like a death knell. "We've exhausted every pathway. It's a tragic reality." Rookie nurse Aisha Bakari stood at the periphery, her heart a raw ache. She was just another uniform in a sea of white, her presence seemingly insignificant. But as Papakostas turned away, dismissing a life, Aisha's eyes met Mateo's. She saw not just the violent tremors, but the sheer, primal terror trapped within them. A desperate plea in his wide, drowning gaze that no one else seemed to register. A quiet defiance stirred within Aisha, a flicker against the professor's pronouncement. This wasn't over. Not for Mateo. Grandview Memorial wasn't just a hospital, it was a cathedral of medicine, its polished marble floors and hushed, echoing corridors testament to its immense prestige and the vast intellects it housed. In its hallowed halls, hierarchy wasn't just a structure, it was a physical presence, a weight that pressed down on those at the bottom, like rookie nurse Aisha Bakari. Her crisp, new uniform felt less like a badge of honor and more like an invisibility cloak in the presence of the gods of modern medicine. Professor Aris Papakostas, with his silver hair and an aura of unassailable authority, moved through the wards like a monarch. His pronouncements were scripture, his decisions absolute. Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa, the neurosurgeon, was his antithesis in demeanor, younger, precise, with an intense, analytical gaze that missed nothing, yet often saw only what the data presented. He embodied an intellectual rigor that left no room for intuition, especially from a humble nurse. The day after Papakostas's bleak pronouncement, the shadow over Mateo's room deepened. Aisha had barely slept, haunted by the raw terror in the boy's eyes. She knew, with an instinct born of years of quiet, specialized care for motor disabilities, that there was more to Mateo's movements than chaotic spasms. She saw patterns, a desperate communication. Her hands, which had once gently guided children through seemingly impossible neurokinetics, fairly ached with the need to reach out, to soothe. During the morning rounds, a rare confluence of senior staff gathered at Mateo's bedside. Papakostas spoke of managing symptoms, of the grim reality of advanced cerebral palsy. Ishikawa, hands clasped behind his back, nodded, his expression unreadable, but his silence echoed the professor's verdict. Aisha, standing at the back, felt a rising tide of desperation. Mateo, though sedated, still twitched, his small body fighting an invisible war. "Professor," Aisha ventured, her voice barely a whisper, thin and reedy against the gravitas of the room. It was a mistake, she knew instantly, like throwing a pebble at a skyscraper. Papakostas paused, his gaze slowly, deliberately sweeping over her. "Yes, Nurse Bakari?" His tone was edged with a chilling patience. Aisha swallowed. I've observed Mateo. His microsignals, the patterns in his dystonia. I believe there might be a way to prime his neural pathways. To create a window for intervention." She spoke quickly, trying to distill years of hands-on, intuitive knowledge into acceptable medical jargon, but the words felt clumsy, inadequate. Before any surgical consideration, a conditioning period, to recalibrate his system. A heavy silence descended. Dr. Ishikawa shifted, his brow furrowing slightly, but he said nothing. Papakostas, however, slowly turned his entire body to face her. "Nurse Bakari," he began, his voice calm, but with a barely perceptible tremor of controlled disdain. "Your empathy is commendable. But we are discussing intractable neurological conditions, not a child learning to walk. Microsignals and recalibrating systems are not found in the standard protocols for cerebral palsy or dystonia of this severity. Nor are they part of a nurse's purview." He paused, letting the words hang in the air, a public reprimand. Our goal is evidence-based medicine, not wishful thinking. A flush crept up Aisha's neck. The other nurses averted their eyes. The residents scribbled furiously on their charts, avoiding eye contact. It was a clear, public humiliation. Her expertise, born of countless hours of dedicated, intimate care, was dismissed as mere sentiment, her insight as amateurish fantasy. Yet, through her mortification, she saw Mateo's hand twitch, a specific, subtle tremor that spoke volumes to her. He was still in there, fighting. Professor, with all due respect, Aisha pressed on, her voice steadier now, fueled by the conviction that she couldn't abandon Mateo. My experience, it's quite specific. I've worked with severe motor disabilities, using non-pharmacological, physical approaches to. Papakostas cut her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. Nurse, your experience is valuable for patient comfort and routine care. Dr. Ishikawa and I, along with our team, have explored every conceivable medical and surgical pathway for Mateo. There is nothing further to be done outside of palliative care. Do you understand? Dr. Ishikawa finally spoke, his voice measured, devoid of emotion. Nurse Bakari, the risks of neuromodulation surgery for Mateo are already astronomically high. We cannot introduce variables that are not clinically proven or understood. We operate on precision, not the theory. His gaze, usually so sharp, seemed to pass right through her, acknowledging her presence without recognizing her input. Aisha felt the weight of their combined authority, a mountain pressing down on her. Her vision blurred for a moment, not from tears, but from the raw injustice. They saw her uniform, her youth, her gender. They did not see the knowledge in her hands, the intuition in her heart. But the terror in Mateo's eyes, the day before, flashed in her mind. No. She couldn't let this be the end. She just had to find another way to make them see. The tension in the room was palpable, not from Mateo's condition, but from the unspoken clash between rigid hierarchy and desperate, unyielding hope. The silence that followed Dr. Ishikawa's dismissal was heavier than any spoken word. It pressed down on Aisha, cold and absolute, reinforcing her insignificance in their hallowed halls. Professor Papakostas merely adjusted his pristine glasses, his gaze conveying a finality that brooked no further discussion. They had rendered their verdict. Mateo Flores was beyond their conventional reach, and Aisha Bakari's unconventional insights were not merely irrelevant, but an impertinence. Aisha felt a familiar sting of helplessness, a feeling she had learned to transmute into quiet observation. She lingered at Mateo's bedside, her eyes scanning his small, taut body. The doctors moved on, discussing future schedules, potential research papers, anything but the boy whose life hung by a thread mere feet away. They saw a challenging case, Aisha saw a terrified child. Hours later, the ward settled into its uneasy rhythm. Aisha was on her rounds, checking vitals, administering routine medications. But her steps kept drawing her back to Mateo's room. His escalating dystonia had always been unpredictable, but today, a new, sinister undercurrent rippled through his already struggling frame. His breathing, though monitored, seemed shallower to her, his chest movements more restricted. She noted a faint blue tinge around his lips, a subtle pallor that the automated monitors hadn't flagged as critical. The fine tremors in his fingers, usually a constant, had intensified, now resembling a rapid, internal vibration. She approached the nursing station, her stomach twisting with premonition. Dr. Ishikawa, she addressed him, her voice low but urgent, I think Mateo's dystonia is worsening. His oxygen saturation is dipping slightly, and his muscle rigidity seems different. More pervasive. Ishikawa, engrossed in a complex surgical diagram, barely glanced up. Nurse Bakari, his vitals are within acceptable parameters for his condition. Dystonia fluctuates. We are monitoring him closely. His tone was polite but dismissive, a practiced veneer over a mind already made up. But sir, it's not just the numbers. His entire presentation has changed. The tremors are more pronounced, and I'm concerned about his respiratory effort. He looks exhausted. Aisha pressed, her voice gaining a desperate edge she struggled to suppress. She knew how she sounded, a rookie, overreacting. But she knew. Professor Papakostas, who had been reviewing a consultant's report nearby, scoffed softly. "Nurse, are you suggesting our state-of-the-art monitoring equipment is faulty, or perhaps that your intuition supersedes years of clinical data and expertise?" His voice, though quiet, cut through the calm of the ward like a surgeon's scalpel. "Mateo's condition is stable. We have exhausted our options. It's a tragic reality, not a dramatic emergency." Aisha bit back a retort, her jaw clenching. They were so blinded by their own imminence, their own protocols, that they couldn't see the silent scream emanating from the bed. They saw data, she saw suffering. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Aisha returned to Mateo's side, her heart pounding. She laid a gentle hand on his forehead, feeling the abnormal warmth radiating from his skin. The faint blue tinge was deepening. His breathing was visibly strained now, a shallow, gasping rhythm that sent shivers down her spine. The tremors had given way to full-body spasms, racking his small frame, twisting him into agonizing, unnatural positions. This wasn't just a fluctuation, it was a crisis. "He's going into a dystonic storm." Aisha cried out, her voice finally breaking, the quiet desperation exploding into urgent alarm. This time, her voice pierced through the doctor's complacency. Dr. Ishikawa snapped his head up, his eyes widening. Professor Papakostas dropped his report, his face paling as he finally looked at Mateo. Mateo's eyes, wide with terror, pleaded silently. His breath hitched, a faint, rattling sound. The monitors, suddenly, screamed. His oxygen saturation plummeted. His heart rate spiked dangerously. The room was plunged into chaos. Nurses rushed forward. Doctors barked orders, their previous composure shattered by the undeniable reality unfolding before them. "Ventilate. Get the crash cart. Push midazolam." Ishikawa yelled, his voice laced with sudden panic. Aisha stood frozen for a moment, watching the flurry of activity, the frantic attempts to stabilize a child whose rapidly deteriorating condition she had predicted. Her warnings, dismissed as mere intuition, had been tragically accurate. The human stakes had never been higher. Mateo was drowning, not in water, but in his own uncontrolled body, and she had seen it coming, powerless to stop the tide. The rigid hierarchy had cost precious time, and now, it might cost Mateo his life. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her, a desperate plea for a chance to just try. Aisha's unwavering fight for Mateo, against a system that dismisses her unique vision, echoes a universal feeling many of us know, the struggle to be seen, to have our intuition and passion recognized. It's a battle for those who dare to find hope where others see none. If these stories of unexpected heroes and profound change resonate with you, we warmly invite you to join our growing global community. Your subscription isn't just a click, it's a vital part of enabling us to craft and share more compelling, heartwarming, and truly inspiring narratives. Help us bring more and better stories to life, together. We'd be honored to have you journey with us. The sterile air of the operating room crackled with an electric tension that had nothing to do with the machines and everything to do with a life teetering on the brink. Mateo's small body, once a source of gentle, intuitive signals for Aisha, was now a battleground. The monitors screamed, a chorus of digital anguish mirroring the silent terror in his eyes. Ishikawa, usually a picture of controlled precision, was undone. His shouts echoed, frantic and edged with a fear that permeated the entire team. "Ventilate. Crash cart. Midazolam." Aisha stood at the periphery, a ghost in the whirlwind of failing protocols. Her warnings, her subtle insights into Mateo's unique distress, had been drowned out by the thunder of dogma and the rigid confines of what should be done. But what should be done wasn't working. Mateo was drowning in the very oxygen meant to save him, his body convulsing in a desperate, losing fight against itself. He wasn't just a patient to her, he was a small, brave soul whose fears she had seen and understood when no one else would. A cold, stark terror pierced Aisha. Not for herself, not for her career, but for Mateo. "He is dying," a voice screamed inside her, clear amidst the chaos. The carefully constructed walls of professional deference, of hierarchy, of the right way to do things, crumbled in that instant. All that mattered was Mateo. All that mattered was the undeniable, visceral knowledge that she possessed a key, a whisper that could unlock his terror and calm the storm raging within him. It was a fraction of a second, an internal earthquake. The fear of breaking protocol, of defying a renowned neurosurgeon, was immense. The consequences could be career-ending, humiliating. But the fear of not acting, of letting Mateo slip away when she knew she could help, was 1,000 times greater. It wasn't bravery born of recklessness, but of an absolute, unwavering certainty. She had seen Mateo's microsignals, she had learned his language, and she had spent weeks preparing his nervous system for this very moment. To stand by now would be a betrayal of everything she knew, everything she was. Her feet moved before her mind consciously registered the command. She pushed past a junior nurse who was fumbling within 4 lines, a gentle but firm momentum in her stride. Her presence, ordinarily humble, was now imbued with an undeniable, quiet authority. She didn't speak. Words were useless here, too slow, too prone to argument. Her destination was Mateo, her focus unwavering. Ishikawa, his face a mask of escalating panic, was calling for another dose of sedative, his back to her. More. Now. His sats are still dropping. Aisha reached Mateo's head, her hands, accustomed to the delicate dance of neuro-kinetics, moving with instinctual grace. Without a word, she gently, but with profound intent, cradled his head in her palms. Her thumbs found the soft hollows behind his ears, her fingers tracing the intricate lines of his cranial nerves, sending a cascade of purposeful pressure points. She began the bespoke movements, an almost imperceptible rocking, a whisper-soft stroking along his temples, a rhythm she had perfected in their conditioning sessions. She hummed, a low, wordless melody, a vibration more than a sound, a frequency designed to resonate with his overwhelmed nervous system. It was an audacious, unheard-of breach of protocol. A junior nurse, interrupting a high-stakes neurosurgery, administering an unapproved procedure in the middle of a crisis. Ishikawa whirled around, drawn by the sudden, inexplicable shift in the room's energy. His eyes, wide with disbelief and fury, locked onto Aisha. "What the hell are you doing, Nurse Bakari? Get away from the patient." His voice was a guttural snarl, laced with the raw frustration of a man losing control. But even as the words left his mouth, something remarkable happened. Mateo's frantic thrashing, which no amount of sedative or ventilation had quelled, began to subside. His shoulders, previously rigid with spasticity, softened almost imperceptibly. His breath, though still shallow, found a faint, rhythmic cadence under Aisha's touch. The high-pitched whine of the monitors began to stutter, the alarming dips in oxygen saturation slowing their descent, then, astonishingly, beginning a slow, arduous climb back toward stability. Ishikawa, poised to physically remove her, froze. His eyes flickered from Aisha's intensely focused face to Mateo's, then to the monitors. The chaos in the room had not vanished, but it had paused, holding its breath. The sheer, undeniable fact of Mateo's nascent improvement hung heavy in the air. For a man who had exhausted all conventional options, who had watched his patient slip closer to the abyss, this impossible, quiet intervention was a desperate, bewildering lifeline. Fear warred with a primal, scientific curiosity in his eyes. He despised insubordination, but he worshipped results. And results, however unorthodox, were now before him. He swallowed, his jaw tight. What is this?" he demanded, his voice now lower, tinged with a reluctant awe. Aisha didn't look up, her entire being centered on Mateo. "Calming his nervous system, doctor. Rerouting the distress signals." Her voice was soft, steady, a stark contrast to the earlier cacophony. She continued her delicate, precise movements, a living conduit of peace and quiet strength. The operating room, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the rhythmic beep of monitors and Aisha's gentle, wordless hum. The decision had been made, the protocol shattered, and in its place, a fragile, new hope had taken root. The sterile hum of the operating theater, usually a steady backdrop to Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa's focused work, had grown thick with an unspoken tension. Days prior, Aisha's inexplicable touch had brought a fragile calm to Mateo, transforming a boy racked by relentless dystonia into a patient amenable to the knife. Ishikawa, against every fiber of his traditional training, had gambled, integrating the unassuming rookie nurse into his elite team, allowing her a presence in the sacred space of the OR. Now, the gamble was playing out. Ishikawa, his brow furrowed in concentration, moved with the precision of a master craftsman, his instruments dancing across the delicate neural landscape exposed before him. Sweat beaded on his forehead, betraying the immense pressure. Aisha stood a little to the side, outside the immediate sterile field but acutely present, her gaze locked onto Mateo's tiny form. Her initial preconditioning had done its work, but the true crucible was the surgery itself. Suddenly, the rhythmic, reassuring beep-beep-beep of the cardiac monitor accelerated, morphing into a frantic, high-pitched shriek. A faint tremor rippled through Mateo's body, barely perceptible but undeniable. His tightly closed eyelids seemed to clench further, and a soft, desperate whimper escaped his lips, muffled by the intubation. "Dystonic spasm," barked Dr. Anya Sharma, the anesthesiologist, her voice tight with alarm. Her eyes darted to the vitals. "Vitals dropping, doctor. BP plummeting." Ishikawa froze, his hand, instruments poised, hovering inches above the critical surgical site. The meticulously carved neural pathway, the very hope for Mateo's future, threatened to collapse. The frantic beeping escalated, an auditory assault that pierced the carefully maintained calm. Panic, sharp and icy, lanced through the room. Years of rigorous training screamed a singular, terrifying command at Ishikawa: abort, stabilize, retreat. His heart hammered against his ribs, the surgical clock was ticking, and with every frantic beep, Mateo slipped closer to the abyss. Despair, cold and absolute, threatened to overwhelm him. But Aisha moved. Not with the frantic energy of the surgical team, not with calls for drugs or equipment, but with a quiet, confident grace that seemed utterly out of place, yet perfectly attuned. Her gloved hand reached out, not violating the sterile field, but hovering above Mateo's head for a moment, an arc of intention. Then, with exquisite lightness, her fingers brushed the skin near his neck, barely a whisper of contact, before settling gently on his wrist. It wasn't a massage, it was a sequence of feather-light presses, of minute, almost invisible shifts in angle and pressure. Her body, subtle and fluid, mirrored a barely perceptible rhythm, a silent dance of connection. She hummed again, a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the air, cutting through the rising panic like a soft, insistent plea. Ishikawa watched, utterly mesmerized, fear still warring with a dawning, incredulous hope. He had seen the initial calming, the conditioning, but this? This was different. This was during the surgical firestorm, as the boy's nervous system rebelled. Sharma, syringe half depressed with a powerful muscle relaxant, paused, her gaze fixed on Aisha. The scrub nurse, who had been instinctively prepping a crash cart, slowly straightened, her eyes wide. Even Professor Papakostas, observing from the sterile viewing gallery above, leaned forward, his sneer momentarily replaced by an expression of profound, bewildered fascination. His lips, usually curled in disdain, were parted slightly, a silent testament to the impossible unfolding before him. Mateo's trembling began to lessen. The frantic beeps on the monitor, though still fast, began to normalize, slowly, tentatively. The subtle clenching in his eyes relaxed, his tiny body easing back from the brink. Aisha's movements were not forceful, but persuasive, as if she was gently coaxing his nervous system back from the precipice, whispering to its deepest, most primal fear centers. It was a language without words, a touch without pressure, a profound understanding of the body's internal landscape that defied scientific explanation. Ishikawa found his voice, a strained whisper that felt alien in his own throat. How are you doing this?" Aisha didn't reply, her focus absolute, her hum a continuous, soothing thread. "Just guide him, doctor," she murmured, her eyes still fixed on Mateo, but her voice clear and directed at Ishikawa. "He's listening now. He's ready." Ishikawa blinked. He looked from Aisha to Mateo, then to the monitors, now showing steadying vitals. The impossible was happening. This was not a drug, not a mechanical intervention, but a raw, unadulterated connection, a bridge built of intuition and profound empathy. He took a shaky breath, adrenaline surging, but this time, it was not the cold dread of failure, but a desperate, exhilarating gamble. He trusted her. He had to. He leaned back over Mateo, his instruments resuming their delicate dance, guided not just by his immense skill, but by the quiet, unwavering presence of Aisha Bakari. The air remained thick with tension, but now, an undercurrent of awe, almost reverence, permeated the room. The sterile confines of the OR, typically a realm of cold science and calculated risk, had become a stage for something primal and profoundly human, a testament to a healing power beyond textbooks, born of unexpected hands. Aisha's gaze, a living tether, never wavered from Mateo. Her hands, though not performing surgery, moved with their own quiet authority, sketching infinitesimal patterns in the air, a silent language only Mateo and, now, perhaps Ishikawa, could truly comprehend. She whispered not medical commands, but gentle assurances, her voice a balm in the sterile chill of the OR. "Breathe with me, sweet boy. Just like we practiced. Follow my breath." And Mateo, incredibly, did. His shallow breaths deepened, matched to Aisha's silent count, his tense frame gradually yielding to the rhythmic sway of her influence. Ishikawa, for his part, worked with a renewed, almost transcendent focus. The tremor in his hands was gone, replaced by the steady, unerring precision of a master craftsman in perfect flow. He wasn't just operating, he was dancing with Aisha's rhythm, his instruments extensions of her unseen guidance. He watched Mateo's vitals, of course, but more importantly, he watched Aisha. Her subtle shifts, the minute adjustments in her posture, the tightening or softening of her jaw, these were his new, unconventional maps, charting the neural landscape of Mateo's fragile brain. Each delicate incision, each minuscule adjustment of the electrode, was a step taken in concert with Aisha's intuitive choreography. The seconds stretched into an eternity, punctuated only by the soft beeps of monitors and the muted clink of instruments. The air, once thick with panic, now vibrated with a fragile, almost sacred concentration. The entire team held its collective breath, witnessing not just a surgery, but a profound act of connection, a bridge being built across the chasm of illness and fear. Then, with a final, almost imperceptible movement, Ishikawa straightened. His shoulders sagged, a silent testament to the monumental weight he had just carried. The instrument clattered softly into the tray. He didn't immediately speak, or even look up from Mateo. Instead, he simply stood, a profound stillness settling over him, as if the very air around him needed to catch up. Aisha's breath hitched. A single tear, born of sheer, unadulterated relief, traced a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Her hand, previously hovering, now gently, reverently, rested on Mateo's forehead. His skin, though still cool from the OR, felt subtly different, softer, less rigid. The tension that had etched itself into his small face for so long seemed to have miraculously eased, replaced by a profound, almost peaceful slumber. Ishikawa finally lifted his head, his eyes, still wide with the intensity of what had transpired, locked onto Aisha's. There was no need for words. The unspoken understanding that passed between them was more potent than any declaration. In that moment, a barrier shattered, a world expanded. Then, a ragged, triumphant exhale burst from Ishikawa's lips. It was a sound of release, of disbelief, of profound gratitude. "It's in," he managed, his voice hoarse, thick with emotion. The modulation, it's stable. A collective gasp swept through the surgical team. The anesthesiologist, whose face had been a mask of grim concern, now openly gaped. Scrub nurses exchanged wide-eyed glances, their own professionalism momentarily overridden by sheer astonishment. The steady, reassuring rhythm of the monitors became the anthem of their triumph. Ishikawa turned fully to Aisha, his gaze unwavering, his expression a mixture of awe and profound humility. "Aisha," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet resonating with absolute conviction. You saved him." You steered us through it. I don't know how you did it, but you did. You guided us all. His hand, still gloved, reached out, not to touch, but to gesture, acknowledging her, elevating her in front of everyone present. It was an unspoken, unequivocal validation, a public recognition of a skill that defied traditional medical understanding. Aisha could only nod, tears now flowing freely, though her lips curved into a soft, tremulous smile. The exhaustion was immense, but it was eclipsed by a surge of pure, exhilarating triumph. It wasn't just Mateo's life that had been saved, it was her own quiet conviction, her deeply held belief in healing beyond the visible, that had been validated. The immediate relief in the room was palpable, a heavy cloak of dread lifting to reveal the bright, sharp air of success. Mateo, still under anesthesia, continued to breathe evenly, his vitals strong and steady. The shadow of escalating dystonia, which had loomed over his young life, had receded, replaced by the fragile, breathtaking promise of a future where his body might finally, truly, be his own. The cold, sterile confines of the operating room had witnessed not just a medical procedure, but a miracle forged in unexpected hands, a testament to the boundless capacity for healing when empathy and intuition dared to guide the way. The hushed reverence that had settled over the operating room after Ishikawa's triumphant declaration slowly gave way to a collective exhalation, a wave of palpable relief washing over the tired, tense faces. Dr. Ishikawa, his brow still furrowed from the intensity of the procedure, turned his gaze to Aisha. There was no need for words. His eyes, usually cool and reserved, held a profound respect, a silent acknowledgement that transcended professional courtesy. He simply nodded, a slow, deliberate gesture that carried more weight than any formal commendation. Aisha, still trembling slightly, offered a small, watery smile in return. The sheer exhaustion was immense, but it was a sweet fatigue, born of success. Over the next few hours, as Mateo was transferred to recovery, the reality of the miracle began to sink in. When he awoke, disoriented but calm, the difference was immediately apparent. The relentless, violent spasms of dystonia that had racked his small frame for so long were absent. His movements, though still weak from the surgery and anesthesia, were no longer a battle against his own body. They were tentative, but controlled. When his parents were finally allowed to see him, the dam of their long-held anxieties burst. Mrs. Flores sank to her knees by his bed, tears streaming, gently stroking Mateo's hair, her face a mixture of disbelief and radiant joy. Mr. Flores, usually a man of quiet stoicism, openly wept, his shoulders shaking with the release of years of pent-up fear and helplessness. They clung to Aisha, their gratitude a fierce, wordless embrace that left her breathless. "Our angel," Mateo's mother choked out, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave us back our son." For Aisha, this was the truest validation, the echo of her quiet conviction made real in a child's gentle breath. News of the unprecedented success spread like wildfire through Grandview Memorial, reaching even the august ears of Professor Aris Papakostas. He arrived at Mateo's bedside later that afternoon, his usual imperious stride slightly tempered. His eyes, typically sharp and critical, swept over the boy, then settled on Aisha. He saw the subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in Mateo's posture, the way his muscles no longer fought against themselves. The evidence was irrefutable. Papakostas cleared his throat, a sound that usually preceded a pronouncement of unassailable medical fact. "Nurse Bakari," he began, his tone a grudging blend of disbelief and dawning awe. What precisely did you do?" This outcome, it defies conventional understanding of intractable dystonia. Aisha, ever humble, shifted her weight. I tried to listen to Mateo's body, Professor. To understand the subtle cues, the pathways his nervous system was trying to find, even when it was overwhelmed. My movements, the priming, they were just an attempt to guide those signals, to offer his system a different language. Papakostas' gaze narrowed, not in skepticism now, but in intense curiosity. "But how did you develop such an unconventional language?" Aisha hesitated, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. This was the part of her story she rarely shared, the wellspring of her unique skill. "My younger sister, Elara," she began, her voice soft, imbued with a deep, quiet affection. She was born with severe cerebral palsy, profound motor deficits. For years, I was her primary caregiver. Therapists used standard techniques, but I found I could connect with her in a different way. I'd spend hours just observing, feeling the microtensions in her muscles, anticipating her involuntary movements, learning to subtly guide her. It wasn't just physical, it was almost a conversation between our nervous systems. A way to coax her body into finding moments of stillness, of control. We called them our dances, even though they were often just tiny shifts, barely perceptible. It was born of necessity, of love, and a desperate desire to ease her struggle. A silence descended, heavy with revelation. Papakostas, the formidable head of neurology, listened, his usual academic arrogance dissolving in the face of such profound, personal expertise. He saw not just a nurse with a peculiar skill, but a young woman whose life experiences had forged an intuitive understanding of the human nervous system that no textbook could teach. It was an empathy so deep it manifested as a unique physiological literacy. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, almost thoughtful. Neurokinetics, as you describe it, born of intuitive care. Fascinating. And undeniably effective. He paused, meeting her gaze, a flicker of genuine respect in his eyes. Nurse Bakari, you have achieved something truly remarkable today. Something extraordinary. You didn't just assist in a surgery, you redefined what was possible. Aisha's heart swelled. Papakostas, who had dismissed her with a wave of his hand, was now acknowledging her with something akin to admiration. It was a victory not just for her methods, but for the quiet, often overlooked wisdom found beyond the confines of established protocols. She remained humble, her focus on Mateo and the hope he now embodied, but deep within, she knew that a profound shift had occurred. She had been seen, truly seen, for the first time in her professional life. And in that recognition, a new chapter for Grandview Memorial, and for Aisha herself, had begun. The weeks that followed Mateo Flores' successful surgery were a testament to life's incredible resilience and the profound impact of unexpected connections. Mateo didn't just recover, he blossomed. His intractable dystonia, once a relentless enemy, receded dramatically. He still had cerebral palsy, but the agonizing, spastic movements that had defined his existence were largely quelled. For the first time, Mateo could feed himself with minimal assistance, his hands no longer locked in an unending battle with his own muscles. He could engage in school lessons, his mind now free from the constant noise of his body's rebellion. His parents, who had lived under a cloud of despair for years, saw their son's bright, intelligent eyes truly sparkle with newfound independence. He wasn't just existing, he was living, a vibrant, curious boy eager to explore the world his body had once imprisoned. Aisha Bakari, though internally validated, remained the quiet force she had always been. The external recognition, however, was undeniable. Grandview Memorial, an institution built on rigid hierarchies, found itself in the awkward yet invigorating position of acknowledging a profound paradigm shift. Aisha wasn't promoted to some grand, administrative title, nor did she seek it. Her authentic life was rooted in direct patient care, in the subtle dance of observation and intuitive touch. Instead, a specialized neurokinetic integration unit was proposed, with Aisha as its lead practitioner and trainer. Her days were now filled not only with applying her methods to other complex neurological cases, but also with mentoring junior nurses and therapists, teaching them to listen with their hands and their hearts, to see the unseen microsignals that others missed. It was a role that perfectly suited her, amplifying her unique gifts without compromising her humble spirit. The transformation in Professor Papakostas was perhaps the most striking. His initial grudging respect for Aisha deepened into something akin to intellectual fascination, tempered by a newfound humility. The man who had once dismissed her with a wave of his hand now sought her counsel, sometimes even sitting in on her training sessions, observing her meticulous yet fluid movements with an uncharacteristic earnestness. He became an unlikely champion for her methods, pushing for institutional funding for research into intuitive neurokinetics, a term he himself coined. It wasn't an overnight metamorphosis. The arrogance that had defined him didn't vanish entirely, but it was profoundly softened, replaced by a genuine curiosity and a willingness to learn from sources he would have previously deemed beneath him. He began to speak of integrated care, of the critical role of human connection alongside cutting-edge technology, his lectures now imbued with a depth and empathy that surprised even his oldest colleagues. Papakostas, the titan of neuroscience, had learned the most profound lesson from a rookie nurse. Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa, already an advocate, soared in his career, not just as a brilliant neurosurgeon but as a visionary leader. Mateo's case, widely discussed in medical journals and conferences, became a landmark, solidifying Ishikawa's reputation as a surgeon willing to push boundaries, guided by an unwavering commitment to his patients' well-being. He worked closely with Aisha, helping to formalize her techniques and integrate them into pre- and post-surgical protocols. His once risk-averse nature had evolved into a calculated bravery, understanding that true innovation often lay just beyond the perceived limits. He became a passionate speaker, advocating for a holistic approach to neurorehabilitation, citing Aisha's work as proof that sometimes the most sophisticated solutions are found not in advanced machinery, but in the nuanced understanding of the human body and mind, facilitated by a truly empathetic touch. Grandview Memorial itself underwent a quiet revolution. The rigid hierarchy didn't crumble, but it became more porous, more open to interdisciplinary collaboration. The Aisha effect, as some playfully called it, permeated the hospital's culture. Nurses were encouraged to voice their observations, their insights given more weight. The emphasis shifted slightly, acknowledging that textbook knowledge, while foundational, was incomplete without the invaluable input of those on the front lines, those who spent countless hours observing the minute, silent dialogues between patient and caregiver. Hope, once a fragile commodity for patients with intractable conditions, now had a new anchor. Aisha continued her work, a quiet force for profound change. She never sought the limelight, remaining grounded in the purpose that had always driven her, alleviating suffering, one gentle movement, one patient at a time. Her journey proved that true healing extends beyond the sterile confines of operating rooms and the cold logic of algorithms. It lies in the unexpected places, in the hands of the humble, in the courage to challenge established norms, and in the enduring power of human connection. Aisha Bakari, the rookie nurse, had not only saved Mateo Flores but had illuminated a path towards a more compassionate, more effective future for medicine, proving that profound change often emerges from the quietest, most authentic corners of the human spirit. Aisha's story reminds us that true healing often comes from the most unexpected places, and that the most profound insights sometimes bloom in the quietest hearts. What unexpected wisdom have you found in your own journey, or witnessed change from an unlikely source? If Aisha's courage and compassion resonated with you, imagine the stories we can tell together. Join our global community by subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you more authentic, inspiring narratives like this one, celebrating the unsung heroes and the enduring power of the human spirit. Thank you for watching, for being part of our journey, and for valuing stories that remind us of medicine's true heart.